Welcome to Building People, Companies, and Careers, brought to you by AccruePartners. I'm Amy Pack.
And I'm Patty Comer. We're your host on this journey through the vibrant business landscape in the Queen City.
This podcast is an extension of our mission statement at AccruePartners, where we have spent over 20 years fostering connections and building relationships.
Whether you're a client, candidate, or business influencer in Charlotte, this podcast is for you.
We are immensely grateful for your support throughout our journey. And now through this podcast, we're excited to share the stories that have defined our path. So let's dive in. Let's do it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Building People, Companies, and Careers, brought to you by AccruePartners. I'm your host, Amy Pack.
And I'm Patty, your co-host and fellow co-founder of AccruePartners. Today, we're excited to speak to one of our most favorite people in the Charlotte community regarding resumes, LinkedIn profiles, and the best way in today's market, which is a hot topic, on how to represent yourself in your brand to the community and the search.
We're thrilled today to have David Pinkley joining us, the founder of Resume Sage. He is going to share with you tips and tricks about your LinkedIn profile and your resume that you have never heard before.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, David. We really appreciate it. Super excited. We've known you for 25 plus. We were just doing the math
plus.
Years. Started as really young and up and coming professionals in an old life at Accountants on Call, where we all started as young recruiters in our 20s. Yes, we would have definitely have been in our 20s. So anyways, it's really exciting that you're here with us today. We're very proud about the name of our podcast because it is tied to the mission and Amy and I's belief system of building people, companies, and careers.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, since you've known us for a long time, you've been following our company, you've been a resource for our candidates, you've come in to help us with training. What does that mission statement of building people, companies, and careers mean to you in your perspective?
Okay. So I can't think of a better mission statement for the two of you, having known you for 25 years plus, and we're getting younger every day, by the way. You guys, in 5 words, have summed up 30 years worth of your life's work, building people, companies, and careers, right? I can't think of another mission statement that is as more memorable as yours is and as concise as yours is, except maybe Google's original mission, don't be evil. So in 3 words, they had a mission statement. You guys have a 5-word mission statement, but you still win because they don't use that mission statement anymore. In fact, their new one is 11 words. So you guys beat them by a mile.
Why do they not use that anymore?
I don't know why they changed it. Maybe they want to be evil now. I don't know. So, but I'm an action verb guy. I'm a resume writer. I'm a word guy. I'll pay attention to the action verb. So here's the deal. The action verb in your mission is building. And I'm sure that was purposeful, building. It's a present tense action verb, which means it's happening all the time. It's current. It's happening right now. You're building. And the thing about, if you think about building a car or a house or a skyscraper, there's a point in time in which the building's done. The car is done. The house is done. The skyscraper is finished. It's no longer being, it's not, you're not building it, it was built. But yours is present tense. There's no end. There's no finish line. You're continuing to build.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And to add one more layer to it, if your mission is building, and that's what you guys are doing, then that would by definition make the two of you builders. And you are builders. I mean, by definition, you create something from nothing. It didn't exist before you created it. That was AccruePartners 22 years ago when you started. And when you think about when you first started the company AccruePartners didn't really exist other than on paper. It was just a legal entity, but it was really just a synonym for Amy and Patty. So wherever you went, Patty, is where AccruePartners went, and wherever you went, Amy, is where AccruePartners went. And that was it. And then you hire your first person, and now your company grows feet, and its mission grows feet. And wherever that first employee goes is now AccruePartners, and you grow it slowly. It's always slow. And eventually, you compound that growth over 22 years. Now you've got something that's bigger than the two of you. Early on, you can shape AccruePartners, you can touch it, but now your reach is so much bigger than the two of you. You're impacting, you're building people that you've never met before. You're impacting, building companies that you haven't probably met before in some cases. And obviously you're currently and continually always building careers. So it's the perfect mission statement for the two of you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I don't know that
There's a lot in there.
Yeah, I don't know that we were that smart when we first started that we thought the build would last forever, but it is true. And we are in the midst of a shift in the business. So I do love that we're building. And I tell people the staffing industry, like careers, is an ever evolving and changing. And you're building it just like you're building a resume.
Right.
And that's really why we wanted to invite you outside of just a really long, tenured, meaningful relationship with you as a person. Amy and I are so thankful for your confidence and always cheerleading us despite the good and bad. It's always nice to know there's someone in your corner that accepts you for who you are. So I can't thank you enough for that. But we wanted to bring this topic because the market's tough right now. And there are pockets that are doing well, but there are a lot of people who are being reorged, restructured, losing jobs, worried about their job, or they're unhappy in their job and are ready to do something else. And there is a difference in today's resume than in the past. And the storytelling and the meaningful communication that comes from that resume, I've always just been super impressed with you. I guess share with us a little bit about your story personally. Like, how did you end up in this profession? And then we can kind of unpack a little bit of gifts to the listeners on how to represent themselves. But how did you get into this?
Yeah, right. So it's a long story. I won't bore you, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. So grew up in Michigan. I'm a Wolverine, go blue. And started my career in Big Four accounting, CPA, auditor. Can you imagine me, a CPA, right?
Never.
So I did that for 5 years. And while the firm that I worked for was fantastic, Big Four, I didn't like the job. It just wasn't me. And so I got into recruiting by happenstance, like most of us fall into recruiting. You don't study it in college. And moved to North Carolina, started as a staffing, permanent recruiter, and where I met you guys at AOC all those years back. And I did modestly well there. I had a chance to go to Hong Kong, got recruited by a top executive search firm in Asia. And it changed my whole world, right? Not just because you're living in another land, but you're learning an entirely different culture where they speak a language you don't speak. And they do a type of search, a type of recruiting that you don't do. And so that was a great experience for me. I started, we were in Hong Kong during 9/11. Yesterday was 9/11, just 22 years now. Tragic events. So because I was headhunting on Wall Street and the banking industry was down, ended up coming back to the United States, working in New York City, started my own search firm. And if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, right? And that led to some really good opportunities. Ended up moving to Charlotte after we had baby number 2 and continued. 2008, 2009, the global recession was really a pivot point for me. My search firm evaporated. Bye-bye. My banking clients went down or got merged and no one was hiring. And we know it in Charlotte because all of these white collar people were like bleeding onto the street, just being laid off left and right. So by luck, people were calling me going, David, I know you as a recruiter. Can you write my resume? I just got laid off. I haven't had a resume in 5 years, 10 years, never. And so boom, I'm the resume sage, just like that. And I found that being a headhunter where you're interviewing, that's your core skill, is interviewing, understanding who people are, right? Not just what they do, but who they are. That all seemed to fold perfectly into the resume writing because I could shape someone's story in a way that they couldn't do, almost as if I was recruiting for them. But in this case, I was writing their stories. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of learning. And I just love it because you meet such interesting people all the time.
So back to this building, you're helping people build their resume, building their LinkedIn profiles. Where do you think it is that people get stuck in this process?
Yeah, right. Okay. So everybody universally hates writing their resume. I mean, it like maybe is like a half step above doing your taxes, right? And it's, in some cases, it's probably like maybe below doing your taxes. It doesn't matter what your level is, what kind of job you're in. You could be an accountant or in sales or in HR or marketing, or you could be the CEO of the company. Doesn't matter. Everyone universally hates writing their resume. And God bless the people, like the 5% of people, maybe the 4, 3, 2, 1% of people who never need a resume in their 40-year career. They always get referred. They know somebody. They stay at the same company. They never needed a resume. But the rest of us need a resume. But no one likes to write it because A, no one's really confident in their ability to write. Even writers aren't confident in their ability to write. That's for starters. But the second thing is, and this is a profound one, You spend 5 years in a job, you go to work every day and you're grinding and you're doing the work and you're meeting the deadlines and delivering on whatever the expectations are. And now it's time to update your resume and you look back and go, what have I done for the last 4 years? Like, what do I actually do? And it's really hard to go back and recall and figure out, like, what do I actually do? Like, I don't even know what content to put on the resume. And then you layer that with what's relevant on the resume, what's not relevant on the resume, how to like design the resume, what's the way how long should it be? There's all of these questions that get riddled as part of this process, and it creates this immense resistance, this inertia, and people want to dismiss the resume and say it's just not important or whatever. But these are all the things that lead to why a resume writer exists, right? Because it's a daunting task. Most people they don't know how to tell their story, and they need someone else to help them.
Yeah, you get kind of gridlocked about your own. We use the words MSA, made, saved, and achieved. That might be an old AOC thing, actually.
I think it is.
But we use the MSA, made, saved, and achieved. And I can talk to candidates. I'm like, tell me what you're made, saved, and achieved. What did you make your company, save your company? Right. What did you achieve? And they're like, oh, that's a great question. And I have a worksheet, and it's, show what you did and what you accomplished so that when you're in an interview, you can articulate just the whole learning process of think about it, write it, read it, and then you'll say it. It does help them in the interviews, but I am very shocked on the regular that the made, saved, and achieved, which is just common vocabulary for headhunters,
right,
that people don't think about their daily duties. And it is hard to write about yourself sometimes.
Right.
So having someone else really to help guide that is, I think, helpful.
I totally use the made, saved, achieved as well. I think it's still very relevant no matter what century we're in. And you're right, like, it's not natural for people to pat themselves on the back for a job well done. It's hard for people to promote themselves. And so you need people, recruiters or resume writers, to tease out the gems, the gold, the diamonds that are sitting in someone's experience, but they just don't know it's important, or they don't know or realize it's valuable to the broader marketplace.
Yeah. What you said, some people don't have them. Some people aren't that great. What is the value, financial value, of having a great resume? What are some stories that you might have to share with our listeners, like why it is so important that this is, I always call it looks good, smells good. And I don't mean that from an appearance perspective, but your portfolio or your resume your CV has to look good, smell good. What is the financial value of having a good resume?
I love this question. So let's just step back for a moment and think about just basically what's happening in the job search market. You're a candidate. You get a call from a recruiter. Let's say you're making $140,000. You get a call from a recruiter for a promotion, a big job. You're a director and this is a VP level job. The job is going to pay $200,000 first year. You're making 40, but this job that the recruiter called you with is going to pay $200,000 base and bonus cash first year. So you think about that job and go, wow, that's a $200,000 job. You kind of want to have a pretty good resume, but it actually is a bigger thing than just a $200,000 job. How long are you going to be in the job? Okay, you're not going to be in the job 10 years, maybe not 5 years. Okay, you'll be in the job 4 years. That recruiter is not calling you with a $200,000 job. The recruiter is calling you about an $800,000 annuity over the next 4 years.
Interesting.
Most people don't even live in a home that's worth $800,000. And that resume, that piece of paper, is your gateway. That's your first impression to make on a company, on a hiring manager or a recruiter, to say, I'm your person. When we write a resume, you think, okay, how complicated can it be? It's just name and employers and bullet points and duties and some dates and whatnot. We totally throw out that entire philosophy of resume writing. We are thinking about where somebody's been and where they're going. We're prospectively writing resumes for people. So when we are sitting down to write a resume, the standard that we're setting ourselves to for that resume is, I want the recruiter, I want the hiring executive, when they see that resume, I don't want them to conclude, I need to interview this person. That's not what I want when they see my resume that I've written for a client. I want them to conclude, this is our person. This is who we're looking for. Get this person, they're hired. That's the standard that we're writing toward. That's a whole different standard than just name, rank, and serial number in your past experiences. It's a very different sort of model. And that's when you start to see the value, the larger value of that resume. I think it's as big as like the deed to your home. Like, it's that valuable if you invest in it.
Yeah. I will tell you, just last week, I was working a senior director of HR search, and I had 5 candidates that I had vetted and selected. Amy actually worked with me on this search. We had handpicked 5 people for this CHRO to review, and I looked at the candidates that I was presenting, and one resume was absolutely smoking hot. The format, the font, the vocabulary, the way the person, now there was some industry lineup that did actually matter. We send all of the resumes one by one with a story of why we've matched them. It's not just a go read 5 resumes and tell me who you want. Mm-hmm. And we sent all 5. She responded to this one lady's resume immediately and said, I love this candidate. I want to interview. I still haven't got the feedback yet on my 4 other candidates. And I knew, I'm a very experienced headhunter, I knew which one of the candidates had the best resume. Now, in my seat, I don't feel it's my responsibility to change resumes. My clients hire me to find the best candidates. They pay me. I think it's really important my clients see how the resumes are written and who uses a different font, what's the layout, how they position themselves, because it means how they're going to show up at work. And I think it's important for the client to see personalities. Yeah. I don't like templated resumes, but I don't change materially formats because I want the client to see the person through the resume. And in this case, this lady's resume made all the they still to this day have not responded to one other candidate.
Wow.
And just want to talk to this one. Wow. And I do find a lot of clients also will fall in love with one candidate and go real fast and hard with that one person. And then they'll go shop if for some reason, but this lady sat herself apart and the other candidates were equally as qualified.
Yeah, well, and in that instance, she was at the tipping point of the high point of the compensation, far beyond the other ones as well. And they did not want to go to the tipping point.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to take what you just said and dispel the conventional wisdom on how hiring works. So we're flipping the conversation a little bit from resume over to the hiring side, but it'll come back to the resume. Most people think, okay, there's a job posting. The company gets 100 resumes. They look through them, they put them through the filters. There's 20 people left. You contact 15 of them for a screening conversation. You're down to 6. You bring in 6 for the first round, whittle it down to 4 for the second round. Third round, you get your 2 finalists, and then those 2 finalists go in and they kind of duke it out to see who's the best candidate. When the interview process is done, the common wisdom is that all of the decision makers get in the room and they debate, how did you like this candidate and who do you think is the best fit? And they come up with the single best candidate as through the entire vetting process. That's what most people think how the hiring process works. You guys know it doesn't work like that at all. In fact, usually when you get to the finals, the company sort of has a favorite candidate already. They already kind of have who they want to hire, and they have a second candidate in there for obvious reasons. But you can back that logic up to sort of the middle of the process, and I would even say even maybe as early as the second interview, you've got sort of a pecking order of that candidate slate. And the hiring executive usually has a preference for who they want. My company, when we go back to the resume now, we take that logic and go all the way to the start and go, if there could be a pecking order after interview 1, why can't there be a pecking order just on the resume alone? Just like the candidate you were talking about. You have one candidate who just outranks, not necessarily less qualified, maybe they're a little bit less, but they just purely on the paper can make an impression on a hiring executive that can set the tone for the entire process. So that's why, again, I think that the resume is it's such a disrespected, undervalued document that really shouldn't be.
Yeah, I will tell you, I mean, I recently had someone I referred to you that was wanting to leave her company and presented me her resume, and she was a consulting type McKinsey type person turned FP&A in corporate world and was trying to move into a different role. And I just said, your resume doesn't represent you and I can't write this.
Right.
And I sent her to you and you wrote her resume and she got a stand-up fantastic job. And she said to me, I'd been looking for a job for 6 months, and the minute I had a different resume and a story, I was getting action that I never had. She did also tell me something interesting. It's a little off topic right now, but she said if I don't respond direct to jobs being posted within 24, 48 hours, I'm getting zero response. So there was some time against, the corporate TA who only has so many hours in the day, and now too many people are applying to jobs with unemployment at whatever number. You've got to really set yourself apart even now more than ever, because so many people are applying who easy apply on LinkedIn is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You send them your LinkedIn, half the LinkedIns aren't even a representation of the resume. Their resume doesn't speak to the LinkedIn, and they don't get any interviews, and they ask why. And it's pretty interesting, the mismatch out there. The easy apply,
easy deny.
Easy apply, easy deny.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so true, though. You're right. There needs to be a parity between the resume and the LinkedIn profile for starters. I do think that there is a sort of a time component to when you do apply for a job. I mean, you don't want to discourage someone who's seeing a job that was posted a week ago, but they're still qualified. But yeah, recruiters and hiring executives and talent acquisition teams, they're all buried, right? And so, I mean, you could make the argument that the first 24-hour matters, and then you could make the argument that maybe 1 week in 24 hours matters and 2 weeks in 24 hours matters, because the recruiter will go in periodically and check, and they'll look at the top of their inbox. So, it's a little bit of a black box process in terms of online applying to jobs and so forth. But the bottom line is, the takeaway here is, without question, the resume has big time power to set you apart in a hotly contested, job market where the unemployment rate is ticking up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As it relates to the best in class resumes and some tips, is there anything outside of Made, Saved, and Achieve that just really top of mind for you is important for people that they could do themselves if they couldn't afford to hire a coach or resume writer? What tips might you provide people?
Good question. So before I finish answering this question, anyone watching or listening right now could Google 10 things I can do on my resume. Boom. So let's just skip all of those low-hanging fruit.
Well, that's chat and AI is really turning people into exactly the same person, and nobody wants that.
Exactly. It's all sort of becoming vanilla,
yes.
right? You put all the colors together and you get brown.
Yeah, we actually had two candidates submit staff accountant resumes, and we had a recruiter submit individually, and the client came back and said, hey, these resumes have exactly the same 3 bullets. And the recruiter had to pull the resumes up and called the candidates and said, this resume is exactly like another guy's resume.
Wow.
And the candidate said, I used ChatGPT. And that is not the future. No. That is not what these generative tools are supposed to be doing. And I think too many people are relying on that for job descriptions.
Right.
And it's not authentic. It's not an authentic voice, and it's not an authentic experience. And when you get in an interview process, someone's going to quickly figure out this isn't the person that submitted me the resume.
Right. Everybody's talking about AI. It's this big wave, but the AI, as it relates to resumes and job searching, it's not that sophisticated yet. So what you're getting is just an amalgam, kind of a Frankenstein document that's basically pulling from all kinds of other documents. And it doesn't set you apart. It certainly does not put you above the rest of the pack. In fact, you could argue that it's just putting you in the middle of the pack. Yeah. Every client that hires me, and those that don't, everybody wants to stand out. I want a resume that will help me stand out.
Right.
You're not going to stand out if you go to a AI and have it generated, or even a template. That's going to just put you basically in the pack with everybody else. But to your point about some takeaway value for anyone listening, watching right now, everybody, couple of thoughts. I like a resume that explains the company and what it does, right? You'll list your employers, but you don't really say what they do or how big they are or the kind of industry it's in, and it can be confusing. Okay, look, if you work at Tesla or Apple or Bank of America or Lowe's companies, okay, we all get it. Those are household brand names, right? But have you ever heard of PTC? Have you ever heard of Church & Dwight? Multi-billion, international, Fortune 1000 companies, publicly traded, never heard of them. So it doesn't matter how big your company is or how small your company is. If it's not a household brand, I think it really helps to explain what the company does in 1 or 2 sentences, because it gives context to the reader. A second thing that you can do today, right now, on your resume is go personal. This is a little bit of a trade secret I'm going to share with you on your podcast. So This is really helpful for Gen Zers, the younger people, and also for people that are more established in their careers. The prevailing thought process, the rule is, don't put anything personal on your resume. If it doesn't exactly, help you become more qualified for the job, you don't put it on. And that's exactly why I do, because no one else does it. And so what we do is put personal interests on a resume in a very specific way. It's professional. We don't put anything that's not professional on there. But we're allowing the reader of the resume, whether a recruiter or HR manager or a hiring executive, to connect with that person. True story. Atlanta, I wrote a resume for a chief compliance officer in a financial services, like a securities firm. And okay, let's just say he was a little boring. And his resume needed a little bit of pizzazz. So we wrote the resume, wrote a great story. And at the bottom, we talked about some of his personal interests, including enjoying time spent with his 2 dogs. And we went further. We said one was an adopted lab and the other one was a Kelpie. Have you ever heard of a Kelpie? Kelpie. I hadn't either. It's a rare breed. It's basically an Australian sheepdog. And literally, after he gets the job, with the resume we wrote, he said, "You won't believe it, David. My hiring executive, his sister-in-law, has a Kelpie," and that's what started our interview conversation. Oh, wow. And so when you have when you start an interview, you kind of want it to be warm. You want to connect some way. You don't want to just come in hard and cold and asking tough questions.
That's that tell me about yourself question. That people just end up barfing their education and experience, and that's not what it is.
Exactly. You want the texture. And so a lot of hiring managers come to an interview when they're interviewing a candidate for a job. They come, sad to say, unprepared. They haven't looked at the resume until maybe a minute before they walk in. They're kind of scratching their head going, who is this person? And so what happens is they're skimming the resume and then they get to the second page at the bottom and it has personal interests. And oftentimes, not always, but a lot of times they will use the personal interests as a way to, like an icebreaker in the conversation. And what it does is it allows the candidate that they're interviewing to have the microphone to speak while they have a chance to orient who this person is and why they're sitting in that seat. Yeah. Right?
It is very true.
It's a little trade secret. Nobody does it. But the reason why it works is because, we do it. I had a candidate literally, last weekend? Senior director, lives in Raleigh. Awesome project manager. And she's in the pharmaceutical space. And she emailed me, said she got a job, another step up. And she said she was a daughter of a coal miner. This was her story. She was like English, and her dad was a coal miner up there. And we phrased in one simple sentence in a bullet point, we put a little phrase about her being the daughter of a coal miner and what that means and how that translates to her work ethic. And again, the hiring executive that interviewed her latched onto that allowed them to have some kind of a common value, if you will, and that set the tone for the rest of the conversation. She got the job. She was super thankful. So it works. It's powerful.
That's great. And I love that describing the company, because in Charlotte we have so many mid-market companies that are not household names. People don't know who they are, what they do, the revenue size.
Right.
And it does tell a little bit about that, because we have a lot of that in the region.
Yeah. And I have a really funny story about someone getting hired off of a personal hobby. We had an FP&A manager interview at a $8 billion company, and the VP of finance, the personal hobby was that he rebuilt a Datsun 280Z engine refurbished or something.
Right.
That VP of FP&A, he talked to that guy about rebuilding. It was like a late 80s. This guy was reliving his college, high school, didn't get a car, and this guy landed the job.
Exactly.
And the funniest thing was, this is just an over the top, he also lived 60 miles from the employer, and we were able to get him a reload package because IRS is 51-mile radius.
Wow.
So the kid was moving from just north of Concord down to Fort Mill. It was the funniest thing. But
good for him.
They hired him. He was your typical FP&A. The resume looked like every other FP&A guy in the world. But this little interesting, and the reason the client told me it was important is he loved that he was tinkering and playing with things, because in their job, they needed to recreate some new reports, tinker with existing data, and it showed that his curiosity in his personal life would reflect in his work life, going back to the ethics. And not to brag on myself, but I'm a military brat, and the reason I'm really good in staffing and headhunting is I've lived all over the world, 5,000 people. I mean, I can figure it out in 2 seconds.
Right.
And it required me moving every 2 years of my life in different countries. I can figure anything out really quick. And that, is something interesting. When I talk to people, they know my military background.
Right.
It's a common conversation.
Yeah. You brag on yourself as much as you want, Patty. You deserve
If I
it.
ever have to write a resume, I might be good at it.
I'll give you one other tidbit that you won't find on Google if you're looking for ways to improve your resume. All right, think about this. You're a director in a company and you want the vice president level job. So you're here and you want to move up one level. The hiring executive for the vice president level job is a senior vice president. So when you're at any level and you want to move up, your resume has to speak to a interviewer, decision maker who's 2 levels above you. So It's not just about what you've done in the past. Once again, you've got to showcase your capacity to grow, capacity to lead, capacity to do something bigger than what you've done. Otherwise, why would you be promotable to the bigger role? So again, subtle things, but very important. A lot of psychology in there.
Yeah, I think because we've been headhunters, the organizational org chart and understanding the hiring strategies and maybe inequities in comp, sometimes in our searches, we'll know in that case of that HR role, like it was something like 160 to 240.
Mm-hmm.
And if we would have bounced at 240, we would have started hitting some people at the next level up. So there are nuances on these director, VP, senior. I mean, you have to really be thinking about in how you present candidates or present yourself, and certainly in resume writing, but we think about that often, and it comes up a lot in the last 3 years because of what I call compensation inflation that happened in the COVID era. There's a lot of problems right now with compression and compensation and titles, and working through the disciplines of a department org chart are is very prevalent in conversation today.
Yeah, I see it on resumes as well in my executive search business. I call it title inflation. Right?
Yeah,
that's a good one.
A title inflation. It's like, well, they were maybe promoted a little bit early. It's not exactly the same level as an SVP in another
I love
company.
that. I'm going to steal that.
Well, and the titles are different based on industry, revenue size, and all those other things.
Exactly.
It's not apples to apples.
Exactly. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So should we transition to rapid fire?
I'm ready.
Any other tips and tricks
Hit
you want
me.
to share with the audience?
Oh, we could talk all day, but we'll save it for another podcast.
Okay. All right. So let's start off with, what is your favorite saying? What is David known for?
Uh-oh, Patty, you're smiling.
I'll say the first, you say the last. You ready?
Yeah.
Ding.
Ding dong.
All right. So tell us about that.
All right. So this is definitely old school. When you were a salesperson, you knocked on doors and you rang doorbells. So what did the doorbell sound? Ding dong.
Ding dong.
So my ding dong is my trademark that is essentially me communicating to whoever's on the other side that it's me. So they know it's me just by reading the ding dong, and they know it's relevant, right? It's not like some long email title.
That
so
is
that's
very true. I know when you email me, I'm like, okay, it's
right. Yeah,
important.
So it's the ding dong. It's like the response, like as if your doorbell's ringing and you know who's on the other side of it. So
not the ding dong as a ding dong.
Maybe some people associate that with me, perhaps. So I like a phrase that I tend to use a lot, which is diamonds sharpen diamonds, right? And so in the career business, you want to make people better. You're investing in people. You're building people. You want them to be sharper because they've come across your path, even if there's no transaction involved, right? That's just the nature of how we're wired.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're gonna make somebody stronger, better, then you yourself have to be strong. And what can sharpen a diamond? Only another diamond. If you want to polish a diamond in the rough, you need another diamond in order to reveal its beauty and its glamour and its glitz. And so that is the phrase that I use. Maybe I'm known for it, maybe I'm not, but it's one of my favorite phrases.
That's awesome.
Diamonds sharpen diamonds.
Yeah, that is crazy. So I know you have the entrepreneurial itch. How long have you had your business?
I am just barely younger than
I know you
AccruePartners.
gave us a 20. You gave
22.
A 20.
22 years. I think I'm like 6 months behind when you guys started AccruePartners.
So that would have been the
2002.
2002. So we were all coming off basically 9/11.
Bingo.
And the economy was not great.
It was soft.
And we all kind of dispelled and started our own companies.
That's exactly right.
I remember getting your card in the mail and gift, and was thinking about the entrepreneurial bug. And it's hard now to be an entrepreneur. I'm really thankful we started 20-something years ago. I don't think it's as easy. There's a lot more barriers and difficulties in running your own business today.
The decision-making process in most companies has only gotten more complicated, dare I even say bureaucratic, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
20 years ago plus, the decisioning was a lot simpler. It was basically maybe one person, maybe two people, not an entire process of, becoming vetted and go through the whole like vending process, right? So I agree with you. I'm glad we started our businesses when we did, and hey, we're still here to show it. Like,
Yeah, we should be proud.
But we're
of
still
it.
getting younger.
Yes. Aging is optional is what
Exactly.
my doctor keeps
I like
telling
that.
me.
Aging is optional. I'm going to take the aging is optional. You can have the title inflation.
So one of the things we like to share with our Charlotte, Queen City, Carolinas listeners is about you personally and like what's your area of Charlotte? What's your favorite food in Charlotte? What are some recommendations? Because Charlotte is such a hot spot. So many people are moving here, trying to learn the thump and vibe of who we are. What would you say about where you live, where you like to go, and that kind of stuff?
We live in sort of South Charlotte, so there's not a lot of thump and vibe in the near neighborhood, but that sounds like the name of a good restaurant, though, Thump and Vibe. When they open Thump and Vibe, I'm going to that.
Okay, well, maybe we'll do that.
Thump and Vibe. So I really like hanging out at Bricktops. It's just easy. It's been there for years, right across from the South Park Mall.
It's got the best salads on the planet.
They've got the best bartenders too, I have to say. They're really, really good, solid, and the food's always consistent. But like that's an easy one, right? Okay, it's there and people know about it. But back when, I guess 5, 6, 7 years ago, when Anthony Bourdain's show on CNN or whatever it was so popular, Parts Unknown, he would go to these remote corners of the world and we would be watching this episode going, that food looks awesome. Where can we get it in Charlotte? And we've been able to discover these little holes in the wall. You can get Ethiopian food on Monroe, right across from Morris Costumes. No one goes in there, but it is like going right into Ethiopia. It is the coolest little experience. You don't have any utensils. You eat with your fingers. We have found a little Korean grocery store also on Monroe down there.
I've been there. I lived in Korea, so
in
the bulgogi and all
in
that.
the back of the grocery store is a authentic Korean
My husband
kitchen.
loves that place.
I love that spot. And we know the best tacos in Charlotte, and they're nowhere near uptown. It's actually near the airport.
And what's
that?
It's called Anita's Taco. It's in the it's kind of over by the police academy and the training facility, not far from the Belk headquarters. There's a weird three-way intersection. There's a BP gas station right there, and there's a little strip mall. It's in the strip mall. It's strip mall tacos. I'm telling you, they're the best.
You said it was Anita's Tacos.
Anita's Tacos.
Okay, well, we'll definitely. Amy
we got like going to the holes in the wall. Like just take me away from just your normal Charlotte experience.
Mainstream.
But not that Charlotte's bad. I mean, Charlotte's awesome. We got great restaurants and more coming, including Thump and Vibe.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
I don't know what we're going to serve there, but it's probably going to be good. Amy's an amazing cook, so she can be in charge.
You can be. Yes. There we go.
All right. I'll start the Thump and Vibe.
Boom. Done.
Exactly. Well, we can't thank you enough for sharing some tips and tricks. And I guess if audience wanted to reach out to you, Resume Sage is the company. I know I always tell people to go to resumesage.com.
Yeah.
But what's the best way to get in touch with you, and how do you want to hear from people?
Yeah, resumesage.com. I think resumesage.com still kind of tracks over there. Find me on YouTube, David Pinkley on YouTube. I got a channel there.
I didn't know that.
I post kind of here and there and just, oddball tips on just everything that, again, you won't find on Google. So that's an easy way to do it, and from there you can kind of track my phone number and email address and so forth.
Awesome. Well, you've done a fantastic job. I think one of the candidates I worked with got almost a $70,000 raise in her job search process.
Bam.
Landed a senior vice president at USAA. I was so proud of the referral. So you do amazing work in our community, and there's not enough people that are authentic, and you definitely offer all of that plus.
You're very kind. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, David.
I've enjoyed it.
Thanks.